Welcome, everybody. Today we have a special guest who's going to share some tips that we wish we would have known when we started our Renunculus knit along. But she's here in time to share some tips for you for not only the Renunculus or your Renunculi, but any sweater that you knit. So grab something to drink in your favorite project and yarn over with us.
And I said, you have just made my day.
Welcome. We are so glad to have you back with us. If you're new, we are glad to have you, and we just want you to know that this may be a different YouTube channel than you've ever watched, but you're going to be thrilled that you joined in. We've got a great episode today. I am Susie Lanier, and I am from Huntsville, Alabama.
And my name is Linda Belcher, and you can find us on Instagram under Yarn Over With Us, or the names that you see there for our personal accounts. But after our last Zoom call, we got on the phone immediately because we had one of our Yarn Circle members sharing and dropping tips and nuggets of just all kinds of cool stuff. And we said, we've got to have her on. Yes. So we invited her to come and join us.
What is that? A doorbell. Someone's here.
Somebody's here. Let's bring her in. It's Denise. Hey, Denise.
Hi, Susie. Hi, Linda. I hope I can live up to that nice introduction.
Could you hear it?
I'm so glad you're here.
Yes, I could hear you. I could hear that.
Well, I warned her that we have, or not warned her. I tipped her off on the fact that we have lots of bloopers, lots of little ditties, and never worry, because we'll either let it fly or we're going to edit them out. So anyway, Thank you for coming, Denise.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's good to
have you. It's great to be here.
So good to have you.
So before we get to the nitty gritty, because we were kind of talking in the studio before you got here, just share like maybe where you're from, where you live now, and a little bit about yourself before we get into the nitty gritty, no pun intended.
Okay, sure. I live in North Carolina. I'm in the Charlotte area, so I'm not too far from Linda. We've lived here for about 20 years. Our kids are in Atlanta and Virginia, Georgia and Virginia.
Oh, really?
Our older kids and grandchildren. So we're kind of in between. So that's kind of nice to be in the middle and to be a few hours from them. So that's really nice. I still work full time. And as far as my knitting, I learned when I was 8 years old. I had grandmothers, all the grandmothers, quilting, knitting, crocheting, and I was one of the granddaughters that enjoyed it. My sister did not like any of it, but so I just kind of soaked up what they taught me and have always enjoyed it. I had boys. I had all boys. I didn't have any girls, and for some reason, I remember knitting some sweaters in college. And of course, like in the 70s, I remember doing the granny square vests and, you know, the various kind of things that were going on at the time. But I don't know, after college and I got married and then had boys, I don't know. It was a time, I think knitting was in a little bit of more of a lull. I wasn't around people that knit. And so for several years I didn't. And then I got back into it in maybe 2002. So I just walked into a yarn store and said, "Where have you been all my life?" It just took off. And you know, I was in a stage where high school, the kids were out doing their thing and then going to college. So it was that kind of change of you're getting to some empty nest and you have a little more free time.
Yeah.
So that
Or
kind
you
of got me
needed more
back into it.
therapy.
Kind of got me back
We have
into it.
boys, we need therapy.
Denise, I have a question. You said you started knitting about 8 years old. What was the first thing that your grandmother taught you to do at 8? Because I have granddaughters that are nearing that age.
Good question.
And I'm just wondering how to start them and what would be a good way to start. I think I started, my first introduction to knitting was at 9. And I didn't have
Yes.
anybody to teach me. My grandmother was involved, but she bought me a little teeny kit at the she called it the dime store,
Yes.
and it wasn't
Yeah.
the dollar store, it was the dime store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had Woolworths. Ours was
Yes.
Woolworths.
Yeah,
Right.
If-
that
I don't
I
know if
think that might be where that she took me to.
yeah.
And it was a little bag that had one ball of yarn, and it had two plastic knitting needles. They were probably maybe about a 6 millimeter, I would think, and instructions. And at 9 years old, I read the instructions and learned how to do a long tail cast on. I learned how to
Wow.
do the knit stitch and turn around and do the purl stitch and cast off. And I knit that ball until it was time to cast off, and I knit a square about this big and about this wide. And I
Yeah.
was 9 years old, and I learned from instruction. So I know I'm not going to make my granddaughters do that, but how did you learn? What was the first thing you did?
I hate to say it, but I don't remember. I mean, I knit continental, and I never remember my grandmother saying one or the other, like hold one thing or the other. I think I
Yeah.
started with crochet.
Okay.
And I do remember making granny squares. Then somehow we got to the knitting, and my funny story was, and this was, we were buying our yarn at Woolworths and the dime store. I mean,
Yeah,
we
the
had the
dime
dime store,
store.
but you were buying your yarn at places like that. It was different.
Yeah.
But I remember going with my mom. We went to some place, and there was a bona fide yarn store. My grandmother was very
Wow.
frugal. I don't know that she ever stepped into just a yarn store in her life. I wish she could be around now, but
Oh, wow.
I got some yarn. I thought, oh, this yarn is so beautiful. I think I had money, and this was more when I was in junior high or whatever, and I must have had some money from babysitting or something. And I
Yeah.
bought this really nice yarn, took it to my grandmother and said, I want to make a scarf. And so I remember that. And
Now,
by
wait
that
a
time,
minute.
she had,
Wait. I've got to interrupt you. Babysitting? You told us you were how old when you learned how to knit?
I was,
How
yes,
old
we were
you when you
young.
babies?
I was the oldest of 4. Yes.
Yeah, we babysat.
Same.
We
Yeah.
babysat in junior
Yeah.
high. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I babysat
Yes.
at 11 years old.
Me too.
I was
I
babysitting.
remember. I
11
remember
years
if
old, people were leaving our babies with us to change their
I know.
diapers.
But you know,
we, like she said,
But you
we
know
had
what? We
siblings.
knew. But back then we were the equivalent of me because I was the oldest of 4 and taking
Yeah.
care of siblings.
I was the oldest.
I was probably the
Same.
equivalent of 19 or 20.
Sports.
I mean, oh
First
yeah.
born.
So, but the funny story was my grandmother saw the yarn, and I was going along, and I just decided, or she decided, let's just do a seed stitch scarf. So that's knit
Oh.
and purl every other
Yeah.
stitch. So that's kind
Yeah.
of hard. And I was, of course, messing that up.
Yeah.
And she says, "Oh, I'll just knit it for you," and she did. And I laugh because I think she just wanted to use that yarn, and it was fine. It was fine. Yeah. So I remember making and Susie, when you talk about learning from written instructions,
Yeah.
I remember getting knitting magazines where they would have the glossary in the back with pictures
Yeah.
of hands.
Yeah.
we learned so differently then.
We did.
I mean, I didn't have YouTube for most of
Man.
YouTube
Well,
videos.
I didn't either.
Now
I
people
mean,
can learn so
there's
much
no-
faster, probably.
there is no excuse for somebody not learning a craft now, because it doesn't matter what craft you're interested in.
Or
There's
much
a
of
YouTube
anything.
Oh
really.
yes,
for it.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
anything.
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
that you need to, that you want to learn, if you can watch and listen to instructions
Mm-hmm.
and duplicate it, you can learn to do anything you want to do now. Technology's
Yeah.
really made anything simple now, really,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But,
Denise, so we had our Zoom call while we were still doing our Renunculus knit along. We were like in week 2 or 3. I can't
Yes.
remember.
And
you
people were
popping
trying
out.
to get done to send them in. Yeah.
They were, and then you were popping out all these or these tips of things that you do to make your sweater fit better. And all I could think of was, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known that before I started my sweater, which is, that's what really made Susie and I talk about having you on there. But one of the most, well, first of all, let me ask, how many Ranunculus have you knit?
I've only knit 2, believe it or not.
Oh,
I've
okay.
only knit 2. The
Okay.
cream one that I sent in for the fashion show, I just did. I mean, I've had it in my queue forever, and for some reason, other things just kept jumping the queue, and even for my classes at the local yarn shop. And finally, I just decided, you can't be a knitter if you don't do a ranunculus. You've got to do it. I said, I just kept thinking 34,000 projects can't be wrong. So
Yeah.
I had to do it. And anyway, so I've only knit 2. So that's a little bit of a, like, I know people that have knit 10, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to make more. I'm definitely going to make more.
So before we get into your little tips and all your little things, we're going to pick your brain. What are you wearing right now?
This is, okay, so the Renunculus, the designer is Midori Hirose. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but Midori. And this is another one of her sweaters that I love. I've made 3 of these. I have plans for more. It is a
What's
raglan.
the name? What's the name of it?
It's called Cherry, like cherries off a tree. And these are supposed to be cherries.
I got to get my readers on. Okay.
But
Beautiful.
this is another one of
That's
hers
beautiful.
that I just think she's a genius because of different choices she makes.
She is.
But anyway, I wanted
know
to
she's
show
a
this.
Genius. I know she's a genius by that scarf pattern she has. It literally is about 16 pages. Have you seen her scarf pattern?
I have not.
anyway.
I have several of her items in the queue to make.
It's called something on Triangle. I'll put it up. But boy, oh boy, yes, she's a genius. But go ahead. It's just, choices.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
I always, for years since the Renunculus came out, I thought, and you just see the projects going up, and I think, what is I was just trying to think of why did it go so viral? What is it that everybody is drawn to? And I thought of 5 versatilities that kind of, that I think.
I'm going to take notes. We're recording it. What am I saying? I can take notes later. Okay.
Oh no! You don't need to take notes.
I literally forgot we're recording. I did.
It's more just because I always want to know why. I'm just curious in that way.
I want to, what are you? Yeah, what do you think?
And so this is my take on why is everyone so drawn to it? Because on the surface, it's a fairly simple pattern. There's a lot of patterns like it. And also, of these 5 versatilities, a lot of patterns have them, but I think it's rare that one pattern has all 5 of these to such degree. And so I will say what those are. This is just out of my own thoughts, and what I think is why everyone's so drawn to it, and why it might be my desert island, stranded on a desert island sweater. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. That's why I would choose this one probably, or the cherry, but one of hers. Versatility of yarn weight and gauge. It looks good at so many yarn weights, and you can play with the gauge. Versatility of yarn type. You can go from a heavy, bulky wool on this sweater to the lightest mohair, very ethereal and open. Versatility of ease. I've seen, the ease and the fit. I've seen people wear it in that Japanese style. I forget the name of what they call it, but she designed it in this Japanese style that's supposed to be very flowy and loose. That's why the one designer picture, I read an article about this, but it kind of goes off her shoulder a little bit or whatever. So that's kind of a vibe. But I've also seen projects on Ravelry where people knit it a little more fitted and it still looks good. So I thought versatility of sizing, ease, and looking good on people. Versatility of the elements. You've got sleeve choice. You've got a little bit of choice in how deep you want your armhole or not. And you've got choice of edgings. Like Linda, you did the I-cord edging, or you can do the little ribbing edging. People have done a lot of different things with that. And then the versatility of styling. And so that's the 5th. And another podcast that I watch, one of them, you may have seen this one, but she was the mother of the groom, and she made a ranunculus for the wedding. She made a silk maxi, and she made the most ethereal, it was ice blue, and she had a blue cami underneath, and she wore it tucked in with this silk skirt, and it just looked amazing. And then I've seen people make it. I've seen some projects on Ravelry where they actually made a turtleneck and made it heavy wool.
Who did that?
It was knitting together with Kim and Jana.
Yes, I remember.
Jana made that for her son's wedding.
Did. I didn't realize it was the Renunculus, but I remember watching that episode.
And I think on her Instagram.
It was an icy blue.
Yes.
And she made it for the wedding. She did. How about
it?
That?
Just looks so classy. And I thought to see a sweater go from, I've seen someone put a turtleneck on it and do it in heavy wool. And then to see it go to a wedding, I thought that's amazing. That's amazing.
I love that, the desert island sweater pattern.
Because
stranded. What'd you say? The stranded islands? Yeah.
Yeah, the stranded on a desert island. If you could only do one pattern, because I kind of thought it has some challenges. If you pick a different yarn, a different gauge, then you've got a new adventure.
Right.
Because you kind of know your sweet spot of how you want to size it, but it's going to be a little different no matter what, depending upon what you're using, or if you're knitting it really loose
I've done 3. They all look completely different. The only way you would know, like I spot a ranunculus, is I'm aware of the three pattern. It's got the 3 pattern. Other than that, you would not know there's the same pattern. And I have seen where these little dots here, or was it up here? No, I think it was down here. They eliminated that little, I call it like a clover, the 4 holes. Yeah. And they put a cable twist in there.
Oh.
And that was really cool. I think that was the Black Cat Co. channel girl. She's done them. And that was cool. I mean, it was just, you can do so much with them. So many times you have to modify a pattern for a larger fit, but you gave tips on what to do with sweaters if you have a smaller, if you need a smaller fit. And you had a really interesting tip you did for your back. Talk to us about the
Yes.
back.
So one of the things, and this isn't original to me. I learned this through some. It might have been a blog. It may have been before podcasting. It was several years ago. So it might have just been in reading a blog, just one of the designers that may be writing about something. And basically the concept is when you separate for sleeves, often in many patterns, not all, but many patterns, the front and the back are equal number of stitches. And then you have
Usually.
a certain amount for each sleeve. And it does kind of depend upon the style of the sweater, but often the front and the back are the same number. But when you look at anyone really, whether they're, no matter what their size, for women, usually we want a little more room in the front than in the back. So what this person had suggested was when you separate for sleeves, if the pattern says, 50 in the front, 50 in the back, and then 20 for each sleeve. I'm just picking any number. That probably wouldn't fit anyone, but instead of doing that, take 8 stitches from the back. So go down to 42 and then put 2 of those in 2 of the 8, put 2 of those in each sleeve, and then add 4 to the front and just redo your sleeve separation numbers. And what it does is it just puts a little more ease in the bust to be right when you separate versus having to add it all under the arm. I mean, you could leave it the same and just add a bunch under the arm, but it's just another opportunity to kind of get a little, maybe only an inch of more ease in the bust. And then in other sweaters for people, I've found this, and it just depends upon what people like, but I was finding a lot of people, the back would be a little more baggy and the neck would be scooping down in the back, but they didn't have enough ease in the front. So it was kind of like we needed to take a few out of the back and put them in the front. So that's basically it. And you can do that with any kind of sweater, raglan sweater or compound raglan. You can always manipulate that sleeve division, front, back, and sleeve division. Now, I've pushed it from 6 to 8 stitches. I can't really attest to, you could find your sweet spot. I've only done 6 to 8 stitches because you can't do too many. But at least it helps a little bit, and then you don't have to add so much under your arm and make the whole body. In other words, we want the width right at the bust, but then we may not want the width at our waist. You see what I mean? We don't want to make the whole sweater. We may not want to make the whole sweater the same largeness.
Right.
I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've just, in my classes, I've just helped people of all sizes. And some of it, when we're in a class, it's a little more custom. So it's hard to do. You can do general tips. You can, but then also everybody's different. So maybe a general, it wouldn't be the same for everyone, in other words. But that's just.
What would happen if you took those 8 stitches and shifted them all to the front and didn't put the 2 stitches on either arm? You could do
that. You could do that. I don't know. I've not kind of pushed the boundaries with that concept. Like, I don't know if you took 12, what would happen? I mean, I think
and I think a lot of that would depend on the bust size of the lady knitting.
Yes.
If she's kind of busty, she would want to put all 8 stitches to the front and leave the arms the same. I think a lot of that depends on the size of our arms, the size of our bust. And
exactly.
You would be thinking too of how many stitches am I getting per inch, and then depending on what size needle you're using for the ranunculus, if you felt like you needed an extra 2 inches, then that's what you would pull from the back to the front. And then you've got to decide, do I need that in the arms too, or do you want the whole amount on the bust area?
That is an excellent point, Susie, because really with that number of stitches, you're converting it to inches because
Right.
and I forgot to mention that, so I'm glad you brought that up. You're basically saying, okay, by moving 6 or 8, depending upon your gauge, you're saying,
Right.
okay, I'm taking an inch out of the middle of my back and I'm moving it to my front, right here at the apex of the bust.
Right.
But then after that, you basically, once it goes below the bust, it's just part of the entire body circle, so it doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't
You
matter
haven't,
at that
quote,
point.
made the whole sweater bigger. But then at that point, you can decide how much ease you want in the body. Whereas
Right.
to fit a bust, you don't necessarily just want to go up 2 sizes, because then you could have the sweater much
That's
bigger
right.
than you want to around your waist.
Yeah.
So it's just a little tweak. I don't know that it's earth shattering,
It's
but
math. It's
I've
math.
I've found it helpful.
That's very
And
those are
fun.
wonderful tips. It's and this is why that knitting is good for our brains, because we have to calculate.
Yes,
Make
yes,
that muscle work.
yes, yes. I do
What do
kind of
you-
call this my Alzheimer's insurance. Yes.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
love
goodness.
that. I love it.
What do you find to be the most common modification that people make?
In sweaters?
Mm-hmm.
So for my classes, I'm trying to think trying to think of an easy way maybe to say the pattern that I would get them into. I will say with sweaters, and it's boring, I know, I do say, if you've spent, let's say they've spent it can cost more than $100 to make a sweater.
Yeah.
Much more, or you might economize a bit, but it's not insignificant to make a sweater. So I tell them, it's kind of up to you, but I want you to swatch and I want you to wash your swatch, because if my goal is them to end up with a sweater that they want to wear, that they really love and want to wear, because
Right.
I know they're spending all that money and time.
Right.
And some are just more, they like to wing it, and that's okay. But they know, understanding that you could get caught there and have to go back, or you may not get the fit you want. So I know it's kind of boring because the swatching and all, but and I'm not super strict about it. I just kind of tell them, you got to evaluate your level of comfort, but it's going to be best for a good fitting sweater, a sweater that
Yeah.
you want, how you want it to fit. I kind of have to know your gauge. And then I do measurements, around the shoulders, the bust, and then I look at the pattern for them in the class. We look at the pattern. I try to show them how to check measurements of what the designer's doing, and try to teach them a little bit about that. But every designer's a little bit different too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You-
Yeah. There is a high to casting on a new project. I mean, we just get so excited to do it.
I know.
That,
I know.
that there it is, and it's like so exciting, and I think that's why people don't want to swatch. I mean,
I
you
know.
just want to get
I
right
know.
to it and get going. So
I mean, that's
would
the
you
teacher
say
in
that-
me. That's
No,
the
but
teacher
you're
in me.
right. I mean, and yeah, no, because like you said, you want them to like what they're making. So would you say that that's the one thing most knitters will skip that they shouldn't?
Well,
Or many people, let me put it this way. Is that the thing that people regret not doing that they should have done?
well, I've regretted it. I don't know. Every project may not require it. Like now with another Renunculus, I may not, I look at it kind of like, if you've used that exact yarn before and the fabric you like to get, and I get that on a size 8 needle, then, and you're fairly consistent. I don't always swatch, but if you're just coming in cold and you haven't used that yarn before, And sometimes it depends upon how long you've been knitting. If you really kind of know your gauge well and what you get with certain yarns like cotton or wool, it, you know, I don't know. I mean, if they don't want to swatch, I mean, I would probably call myself a lazy swatcher. I do swatch. Sometimes I don't swatch in the round like I'm
lazy.
supposed to, but I usually do wash it.
1 inch.
I know. I don't do huge, and I try to do the pattern if it's cable or whatever, and I usually do wet block it only because
Do you?
I wish I was more experienced with every single yarn and how it's going to behave, but there's just so many yarns. I just don't want to be surprised later.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Well, I'm
So,
lazy
like,
too.
I'm a lazy swatcher, but I really try.
Yeah.
I guess, more concerned about how many stitches per inch than rows.
Yes.
I never care
Yeah.
about rows, because most of my sweaters are going to be, you're just going to knit as long as you need it anyway. And if you're sure you have enough yarn, it's not
Right.
that much of an issue. And I
Yeah.
have to say, honestly, I have never blocked a swatch in ever. So,
Well, that's okay.
I'm
I mean,
fired.
no.
I'm a rebel knitter.
Remember, it kind of depends upon what you're making too, because I don't feel like the Renunculus is as dependent upon that. But
Yeah.
we knit one of Andrea Mowry's cabled sweaters. It's a cardigan, no buttons, but it's bottom up, and it's a drop sleeve. So there, you've got a certain number of cables from here to the top of the shoulder, and what we discovered is we had to pay attention to, or what I knew, we'd have to pay attention to row gauge, because otherwise you could get a cable cross right on the top of your shoulder. And I made him an example, and I showed him, if you cross your cable up here and then you do a 3 needle bind off, you get little hills, you get little bumps on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we get into classes and I just say, okay, in this sweater, it's important. But and this is why, but it's not all, but row gauge is not always important, because you can just knit the inches that you want. That was something I was going to say. You can, in patterns, often people will just be, okay, she said to knit 10 rows and you're going into your armhole, or let's say 30 rows or 40 rows. But in an armhole, you want to pay attention to your inches, because you don't want it to be way, way below your armhole necessarily.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
So what for you was the most, like, biggest aha moment in knitting, besides the fact that you loved it so much?
Making cute sweaters. I don't know. Aha. I mean, I think, well, the math so I would start, not that I can interpret all of them, because there are very difficult patterns. But when I started reading through patterns and realizing that I could go through and see how they got the numbers, after this many rows, you're going to have this many stitches. And I could start to do the math and say, oh, that's how they got that. That was an aha, because then I realized when I made a mistake, or if I didn't have that number of stitches, I could go back and I could kind of figure out. So maybe some of that was kind of an aha, like, oh, now I see what they're doing. And that helped me to be able to modify things. Once you understand it, then you can go from there and modify it,
Sure. So just learning the mechanics of what you're doing, and when you do said thing, what that does. And I think that's the big thing, is learning, learning just the mechanics and what it all does to a sweater, like moving around a stitch or two, or yeah, and I think that's just really comes from practice. I can't say I'm reading them. I page through Elizabeth Zimmerman's. I have 2 of her books now, And frankly, it's like, I know it's supposed to make my knitting easier, but so far it's making my brain want to explode a little bit. It's just, so but I am learning little tidbits as I can soak it in about what we're doing. What are we really doing when we
Mm-hmm.
do this action? What is that creating, and what's that going to mean to the project that you're knitting? And,
Yeah.
it's a lot like sewing. Everything you do does something,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
like I said, I just want
practice.
a fun sweater to wear. So I wouldn't even call myself um I'm a technician to the extent that when I've done a class, I want to know, I zero in on that sweater that we're doing and I try to give them the best analysis that I can and to get that sweater to fit well, teach them, what is a raglan, what is a circular yoke. For example, the Renunculus is a circular yoke with a partial compound raglan. And so I try to teach whatever's in that sweater, then that's kind of what I concentrate on teaching them. But
Sure.
I'm not and we have these at our local yarn shop, a true technician that knows 20 different cast-ons. I
Oh,
know several cast-ons, but it's just because I wanted to make that sweater. So I'm going to learn. I want to find the best cast-on for that, or learn the one that the designer put in.
Did you use her
Um,
cast on? Did you use
I I
Midori's
tried
cast
it.
on?
I did
Yeah,
try it.
I tried it
I
too.
I found it that was my first effort, and see, you've exposed me. I didn't want to waste any time, so I just decided to do a long tail cast on or a
that
German
I
twisted.
did.
I think I did a German twisted because I wanted to get going. So see, that
Stretch.
even happens
Yeah,
to
I
me.
know.
But
Yeah.
it is very, very stretchy. And the first one that I tried that I didn't finish, but I'm going to go back to it, was 100% linen.
Oh,
And so it had no stretch, nothing. And it was so wide. I mean, it kind of looked like the pattern pictures, but
right.
I thought, I don't know. I think that's going to fall off my shoulders. So I just kind of started over and did something else. And then, but I'm going to revisit that one at some point with the linen,
Yeah.
100% linen,
I
and see.
have a question. And you're a teacher and you teach garment knitting. Um, I did teaching, but I didn't do garment knitting. And I had a formula for new knitters that came in, what my formula was to teach them to get the yarn on their needles and start knitting. And I did a dishcloth, and then I went to a bib that taught them a lot of different techniques. It taught them I-cord and make one left, make one right, and it was garter stitch and stockinette stitch. They learned a lot in that bib, and then we went to the building blocks blanket. As a garment teacher that teaches garment knitting, do you have a favorite? Do you have like a pathway of teaching that new knitter that is never, maybe they have to already know how to knit to start into garment
Mm-hmm.
most of the time? What is your formula of, like, this is what I want to instruct you to make first? This would be your first garment that I would want you to try to put on your needles and to make. And what is that and why?
That's a good question. I would probably pick a raglan, a top-down raglan,
Okay.
because there's so many of those. That would give them a lot of choice. But to be honest, I have not done that. So this was more just by circumstance that our local yarn shop had more people that could teach beginners and beginner sweater knitters. And so, but she didn't have anyone to do advanced and fit and whatever. And I just landed in that slot. So normally when I get people, they're pretty experienced, and I'm showing them how to manage 5 charts. And
Oh, wow.
so I mean, so all that to say is I applaud. I have watched people teach beginning knitting, and I'm not sure I could do it. Number one, I'm a talker, and I think at times I can overwhelm people. And the advanced knitters, you know, like we're just going into all the details, and I laugh, but I applaud that because that is a very specific. That's a skill, and I've been along those lines. I've kind of been careful with my granddaughter because I don't want to overwhelm her. And we've done a few things, and her other grandma knits and crochets. And so we've had a few sessions and we just keep it light. And then she'll say, Nana, I just want to break. And I say, okay, sweetie, you know, I just let her go off. I don't pressure her at all because I'm afraid I'm going to, I want her to, you know, continue to enjoy it and just come back when she wants to. And we're at a little bit of a lull right now. So, yeah, I mean, that's great. I think that's what they do at our shop. They do a dishcloth. It sounds like you're doing exactly the right thing. And maybe I should do more of that, but I've just, there was a need there, and I enjoyed it. And sometimes even the advanced knitters, you know, they're like, I mean, sometimes I can give too much information. So I hope that,
No,
I hope I
that's
haven't
good.
here. I hope I haven't here, but it's in my nature, I guess.
No,
What's the
you've
most
given great
difficult?
information.
Yeah. And what's the hardest thing you've ever knit?
Oh boy. Well, I think, well, I knit a steeped colorwork cardigan by Caitlin Hunter. It's called The Wandering Woman, I think. And it was hard because there were, first of all, it was color work and it was going to be steeked, and it was my first time. And so you have to learn how to put in the stitches where you're going to
Very.
cut.
Yeah.
And then thankfully it wasn't steeked arms. It was only steeked up the middle of the front. And then the way the color work was, often you had 3 colors in a row. And so if you've done color work, 2 colors is pretty good because, you know, you can manage 2 colors, but 3 colors, it gets tricky. It gets tricky. I'm not a color work expert at all. So that was very much of a challenge. And so, I'm trying to remember. I feel like I blocked it before I steeked it, and I had puckers and I ignored that. Well, once you steek it, you're done. You can't go back. And so
Oy.
because of that, I didn't quite have my tension right, and I got some puckers in my color work. And anyway, so I can't really say it was a success. It fits and it's cute, but I see a lot of flaws in it. And I thought that was, it was definitely, I thought, well, okay, if I want to do more color work, if I want to do steeking, I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot of practice to go through.
So before Susie got on, we were chatting and getting things set up, and she confessed that she doesn't knit socks. So let me ask Susie, if she was going to start knitting socks, what sock pattern should she do?
Yes, I've not knit
Beginnings.
socks.
Totally off the sweater. We're on
Do
the
you
socks
want
now
to know
because you
why?
knit socks.
Why?
Yeah, why?
Well, because it's kind of like the second sock syndrome, because I knit a pair of fingerless gloves and I got one done, and then I thought, oh, I got to do that same thing all again. And then I knit the other one and my gauge was different. So I had 2 different size gloves, and I thought, this is exactly what's going to happen with me if I do socks. I'm going to
And
have
I
one sock
feel-
bigger than the other.
I feel like that about the sweater sleeves, especially when they're long, not the short because they go fast. But when I did my long sleeve sweaters, I'm like, now Linda, you can't give up. But then you get one done and you see it. But I know it's like not gonna knit another sleeve, same thing.
Sleeve Island. I would be on Sock Island.
I'll tell you the secret to that for me, and I'm not saying
Okay.
that this works for everybody, But the secret to that to me is knitting them together. And I don't do two at a time. As far as putting them on magic loop and you're doing 2 socks on your needles at the time.
Right.
But my favorite way to knit socks is on 9-inch circulars. Now I have to go to double points when I go to heel flap gusset.
Okay.
And not that, the heel flap and gusset. When I do that, a lot of times I do have to go to double points. But when I'm doing the leg and the foot, it's 9-inch circulars. And so what I do is I just like doing a plain vanilla sock. You know, I do when I'm doing socks for me, I do a 64 stitch cast on. And when I'm doing it for the men in my world, my son, my husband, I do a 72 stitch cast on. I knit on a 1.5 a US, I don't know what the millimeters is, but I knit on a US 1.5 needle. And I have 2 circulars and I have 2 sets of double points. And so what I do is I start one sock, cast on 64 stitches. I do the cuff, however many, most of the time I do 25, knit 2, purl 2, or knit 1, purl 1, whatever I feel like doing. And then I put that down and I go to the other and I start the second sock, do it to that point. Then I will maybe carry the second sock down to the heel flap and then pick up the other one and do it to the same point. And then I'm going to do heel gusset, then put that down and I go to the next one. So I'm pinging back and forth. So by the time that I knit, and I use Nancy Wheeler's rounded toe, it's in many of her sock patterns. That's my favorite toe. And heel flap gusset, if you pick up Nancy Wheeler's pattern that has the rounded toe, I follow her pattern for the heel, you know, doing the heel flap and gusset. And the other is just how long you want to make the leg and how long you need to make the foot. I love the new little tool that I love is the one that the ruler that rolls up and you pull it out and you stick it in the foot and it goes back to the heel and it shows you how long the foot is. And that's really neat. And I also do the little light bulb stitch markers and I'm marking every 10 rows with them. And so, you know,
you get them the same size.
Yeah, and you even could do it as much of knit 10 rows on one and 10 rows on another, 10 rows on one and 10 rows on another.
I could get into that because then you're done at the same time.
Exactly.
I could get into that.
When you do the toe on one, it's finished. Now you will just go over and do the toe on the other one, and you've got 2 pairs of socks. And so I love pinging back and forth. And I want to show, you know, there's a lot of brand names of sock yarn that they ball them up individually. You know, if you get self-striping or if you get a variegated, it's really not going to matter, but you want to divide your ball. And I'm going to interject this. I went to the Middle Tennessee Fiber Fest in Dixon, Tennessee yesterday. We had a wonderful time. I went with 2 friends. And there is a yarn company that's there that I love seeing at the different fiber festivals. They're at a lot of them. And they always, their sock yarn is beautiful. It's Hinkston handmade, and the web address is Hinkston, HINKSTON, handmade.com. And they do this, you know. So
it's already split equally?
It's split equally. And the only thing that you would have to do is if you wanted to make cuff, heel, toe, different colors, you would add in a fingering weight yarn that would be comparable to this. This is 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. And each hank here has 223 yards for a total of 446 yards of sock yarn. So this, you know, buying your sock yarn this way when the purpose is to knit socks, and then I bought.
That's beautiful.
It's the only thing I'm gonna show, but here's another one right here. I mean, they're beautiful colors.
For the next episode.
Susie, would that make How long of a sock would that make for you? Like, would that make a mid-calf sock or like an ankle sock? That amount of yarn,
No,
probably?
you could do mid calf because the
Okay.
men that I do socks for, they like them to come up about mid calf, really kind of like normal dress socks.
Right,
It
right.
would make the size of like dress socks,
Okay, okay. So
And
that's so
that's
they're giving you good yardage even if you have to make a men's size.
great yardage, especially if you will
That's
use
nice.
a corresponding color for like the toe or the cuff. Then you have plenty of yarn, even for a guy that has like a size 13 shoe, wears size 13 shoe. You know, you're going to have
Okay.
plenty of yardage for that. But that is what makes socks comfort knitting for me. A very simple pattern with vanilla sock, and then pinging back between the two socks, and however it works for you. And then I don't get one sock syndrome because that's not
Yeah.
the way I knit them, you know.
Well,
So-
you mentioned comfort knitting, and I've heard you mention this several times as I've been watching the podcast, and I need more of that because I kind of got in where I was just doing sweaters.
Everybody
But
needs comfort
I've
knitting.
realized, I have
Everybody.
realized like for the car and different, just
Yeah.
in general, if I have a
One of
very
my-
busy
and
week,
One of my favorite comfort
I
knitting
need-
is a dishcloth.
yes,
You know,
I
they
need,
make
oh yes, I
great
remember
gifts.
when you made those baskets.
Great. Yeah, great gifts.
But a shawl, I need to, like you, have a shawl or a little blanket or a throw or a baby blanket on the needles always, because I don't know, just lately that's been more important to me. And you kind of hit that home. I've heard it from you, and I'm like, I need to do that because
Yeah.
sometimes I just, I'm maybe at a place where I've got to make a decision about the sweater, and I don't have the brain space to make that decision. I don't know what kind of length of sleeves I want yet or whatever. And I don't want to decide. I don't want to make any decisions. I just want to sit down and knit.
Well, and
So-
when you don't have the comfort knitting, what happens for a knitter is that you feel lost. You know,
Yes.
if I don't,
I get a
when
little
leave-
paralyzed.
You do, and when I leave the house, I never leave the house without my yarn bag. And in it is things that I know that if I get stopped and I just want to pick up my needles and knit, I can do that. And that's where all that comfort knitting comes in. And I am not a one project knitter. I always have multiple
I
things
used
on.
to be. I'm not
I
anymore.
have multiple things on needles because
Yeah.
you know, you really do need a project for every event that you go to.
Right.
Depending on
And you
what
need,
it is.
and you need
You're sitting
small,
at the doctor's office, if you're in a traffic jam, you know.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting in a traffic jam, a dishcloth is I'm knitting on it, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I take every opportunity to make a stitch. Every opportunity.
yeah. I've
And
waited for
so-
AAA a couple times, and that kind of got me to where you need something, because I don't want to
gotta
sit
have
for 45
something.
minutes. I could be knitting while I'm waiting for AAA to come and
Amen.
fix my tire or something.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
So Susie
Yes.
and I always get to show what's on our needles. What's on your needles?
Oh,
Did you
what's
bring
on my
it?
needles? I do not have it. You know what? I am in between projects.
oh,
I have, so the good side of that is that, starting in February after the snow, because we were more home due to my husband's surgery. I just decided I want to finish some things. So I finished several things. I made a sweater for my granddaughter. I finished my Renunculus. I've been kind of going back to some whips and finishing them.
Good for you.
And so I'm truly ready to cast on and
Do you have
something.
anything to show us? I saw you look over there. Do you have something to show us?
Oh, I just had my Renunculus in case I needed them. That was
Oh,
all.
Yes.
That
yes.
was all that I
They're
had.
Beautiful.
Yes.
well,
I do have a
tell
baby
us.
sweater to make.
Yeah,
but-
show us.
Show us that Renunculus.
Well,
Yes.
well, the fashion show was great, but these were just in the fashion
Well,
show.
This
So
is
this
close
is
up.
That's
There's that one.
beautiful
I
work.
love the color.
That's
Beautiful.
cotton and silk, and that's very comfortable to
Ooh.
wear. And this
Where did you
is
get it from? Do you remember?
the
Is it
cotton
nice?
silk. It's one that I had in my stash. It was made by Classic Elite Yarns, and it's
Okay.
trying to think of the name.
Is it a DK?
It is a DK. It is a DK. And this one is Sandnes Garn Tin Line held double. It's a fingering weight held double. And this is a little problem I want to solve. I don't know why it happened on this ranunculus, but see that bump? That's in the back of my
Yeah.
neck where I joined. I don't know what I did wrong. I've got to work on that. That didn't happen to my other ones, so I don't know if it was
Put
the
a
yarn
tag over
or-
it. Get yourself
Yeah,
some
yeah.
tags and put it over.
But that's the type of thing. But that's the type of thing that might bother me. And I'll say, "Oh, I'm going to revisit. I'm going to go back and figure out why did that happen on that one or whatever."
Yeah. Interesting.
But
yeah.
But I was thinking, the ranunculus, you could actually make a little beachy dress. I was thinking the ranunculus would make in a linen would make a really cute bathing suit cover up.
Like a
Because
cover-up.
make your armholes kind of big, make your
Yeah, mine
short
are
sleeves
big.
kind of big,
Mine are-
and
mine
then
aren't that big. But
cast on a little more on the body and just go straight down and just take it however you're comfortable, maybe just to the knees and throw it over your bathing suit. I
So,
just thought that would be cool.
yes, it would be. So, about 7 years ago now, I crocheted a beach cover up. I
Ooh.
used, and this could be the problem, I don't know, but I used the Hobby Lobby cotton, their brand, and I did it, and it was crocheted, and it was larger, holes. It was larger, you know. And when I would wear it, I'd walk out and the thing would stretch 5 sizes bigger. And I'd get it wet, it would shrink back up. So why do you think that happened? Is it just because it was 100% cotton? Is it because it was so loosely crocheted? Because this top I'm wearing is cotton and no, it is cotton and that weird name. I think it's a seaweed or something, but it does not stretch.
Oh,
at
yes,
all.
I
It does
remember
not
you saying
stretch.
it is a seaweed. Yeah.
Super, whatever. I don't even remember how to say it.
Supercell or something?
Something
Lyocell?
like that. But why do you think that crocheted? I see now. I'm afraid to make something like that out of 100% cotton. What would you use for a cover-up ranunculus?
Okay, so crochet is a little heavier because of the way the stitches are made. It can be denser.
True.
Yes.
Yes.
But a couple years ago, we did a class and we made a dress by a Ukrainian designer, and she styled it as kind of a dress for the beach.
Right.
And we made it out of a fingering. I mean, you don't want to hear it. It was kind of torture. It was a little bit torture because we made it on size 2
You lost
needles.
me at fingering.
But we got a good result in the end, but it took us a long time. But it was kind of it was a midi dress, but it was light. I mean, it was pretty light. But it was
So
fine
you think
yarn.
the weight stretched it? You think possibly the weight of it stretched
Maybe
it so much?
maybe if you just made it shorter and then allow for the stretch. Dresses can be tricky. I mean, certainly if you did a ranunculus like that, for dresses, you do have to factor in the weight. So probably what you'd have to use would have to be super light. But
Yeah.
that looks fingering. Is yours
No,
fingering?
it's a DK. It's a DK. I don't.
Okay.
Now this is fingering, and I get so bored with it. It is taking forever. But I wanted,
I
you
like
know, I
it.
wanted the lightness for our climate, but
Mm-hmm.
it does take a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the Lindy chain. But anyway, so it doesn't stretch or anything. I have another top that I made out of it, and it didn't, you know, it held its shape. But they're
Mm-hmm.
it's a, I don't even know what size. I think these are 6 needles, maybe six. I think they're size 6 needles, and of course it's, you know, it's nice and tight, and so anyway, not
Mm-hmm.
heavy. So
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
I like the
Dresses.
idea. The Renunculus has a million possibilities.
Yeah. I'm planning some more. I really do want to make a long sleeved one. Um, I don't know if I've made this sweater in Noro with the colors. And I like that. I
Have
have not done a
you?
ranunculus in that, but oh, I wanted to compliment you too on well, first of all the things that you hit on the ranunculus were right on. I mean, I was watching along, and I think it might have been the second video, Linda, where you were highlighting the issue with that loop stitch, where on the next
Oh,
row, and you've got to knit those two together. And I
Yeah.
thought, there she goes, because that came up in my class.
did
That's
it?
a tricky little thing,
I
because
thought it
that
was
loop
me.
that loop just wants
It
to jump.
shifts.
Yeah.
And we
Mm-hmm.
specifically went over that in class, and I said, now the next row, you've got to look for that loop, because it's going to want to jump over. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's supposed to be in that other space. And I loved your video where you were showing, it was very clear. And I was like,
Little
you
arrow.
hit one of the big things, because that was
Well, one of
important.
the yeah, and one of the times, I mean, like when it first started happening, I had to turn it, you know, because I
I kind of
I'm
had
not
to
a
pull it
professional
out. I had to
knitter.
yank it.
I had to, well, I had to turn it around, look at my pattern, like what was that order, and then you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then I learned where it should be in it. So yeah, it was so sneaky little stitch.
So, Susie, how did you like your yarn? Your red ranunculus. Did you end up liking your yarn and everything?
I did. I really liked my yarn. Um, I made it more short-waisted because the idea was that I wanted to wear it over like a little sundress.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
have not found a dress yet, and so I'm really contemplating pulling the ribbed band out at the bottom and lengthening it, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that it will be more versatile in how that I'm going to wear
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not happy with the short waist, but the size is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I have
Good.
not blocked it yet because I wasn't sure. I've been looking for a dress, but then if I find one, it will probably be the only thing I wear it with. And I
Right.
could
Right.
still wear it over a sundress, a very light sundress to give some warmth, even if it was longer, and I would be happy with it either way. So I think what I'm going to be doing is I've got plenty of yarn to do that. I think I'm going to pull, I've not done any ends in or anything like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the rib out from the
Mm-hmm.
bottom and lengthen it, and then redo, you know, my bottom rib on the
Okay.
bottom. So, but
I
I
That
don't
should
love
be
have
my
pretty
the
easy.
yarn.
figure.
That should be pretty
Yeah, and I
easy.
don't
Yeah.
have the figure to wear it. I've decided if this doesn't stretch out, um, although it looks okay with my dark blue shirt, because it kind of blends right into my jeans or my jean shorts even.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the figure to wear a short top over anything. I need him, yeah. So I would always now make mine a regular sweater length
Yeah.
for
Mm-hmm.
all the things you just said, Susie. But it
Yeah.
was
Well,
nice
you
Yeah.
to
know, I
try.
thought a dress is going to be given that cover that I would want with a sweater, a
Right.
cardigan or a sweater. But I certainly can. I mean, you know, I've
It's
got midlife
hard to find a
daughters.
good dress nowadays.
Yeah,
Oh my
it
goodness.
is.
Well, that too.
I'm much more prefer to wear slacks. I
Mm-hmm.
feel more comfortable in
Mm-hmm.
them, and so
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to pull out and work some more on
It's
it.
still it's still gonna look great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
the
But
color
that
of
should
the
be
garden.
an easy
Love the
fix
color.
Yeah.
to get it to where you can wear it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can still wear it for us sometime because all we're going to see is from here up.
That's
So
right.
we'll see the pattern.
Well, and I hate that I don't have it on today. I mean, I could go
okay.
get it and we could show it, if anybody's watching that is watching for the first time. But I had
Wear it
church
next time.
today. I had church
Yeah.
today and I had 3 children and I didn't wear it to church, of course, and I got back so quick, or I got back and had only a short amount of time to get on here, so I'm dressed for church.
That
today.
is a busy day with little ones. Oh
It
my
is.
goodness. That is
I
so
do
busy.
not. I do not know how my daughter does it. This morning I felt so overwhelmed. 3 little girls and they all needed. We were so tired. We didn't do baths last night, and baths and washing their hair and drying their hair and curling their hair and putting bows in their hair and and breakfast and getting everything packed. And listen, I didn't get to church until there was about 30 minutes left.
Oh,
I thought, why am I persevering to do this? I just don't need to do it. And I had friends that were waiting for me in the top parking lot, and they took the 2 older ones in. Of course, the little one has not been feeling good for the last few days, but I mean, she's over the hump, and she was real whiny, and it was just I thought, why am I doing this? And I thought, no, I'm going to church. I'm going to church. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And so I get in our church service. The worship service starts at 10:45, and I'm climbing in the car at 11 minutes after 11, and it takes me 15 minutes to get to church. I'm thinking, what am I doing? But anyway, I persevered and I got there, and of course they were thrilled to be there. They got, they're into their classes, and
they'll have good memories. They'll have good memories of going with you.
And little ones, you need to keep them busy anyway. I'd probably be miserable if we'd stayed home. It gave
Yes.
us something to do, got us in the car, got us out and about. And so,
Yeah.
it's been a good day.
They
I just know that I'm 24 years older than my daughter, and I don't do the things that I used to do.
Yes, after our grandchildren
my
visit,
goodness.
we have to take a nap because we're
Phew.
so tired. Yeah, that's for sure.
Well,
for sure.
Denise, first of all, I want to tell everybody that we probably would have never met Denise if she hadn't been on our Zoom call. And if you're
That's
missing our
right.
Zoom knits,
Yeah.
you're missing a lot of fun.
Yes.
And thank you so much for coming on the Zoom call, first of all, and being brave enough to meet us wild and crazy people. And then for coming on today. Thank you so much. It's been so fun. And hopefully we can meet for in person, because Denise and I
Yes.
only live probably 40 minutes apart from each other.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We'll
yes,
have
y'all-
we'll have to
y'all
work on
have-
that.
Y'all have no excuse to not meet.
Well,
Right.
and
knit
Susie will,
together.
I know, and Susie will be up in August, so we're going to have to get together
Yeah.
in
Very
August
good.
for sure.
Very
So,
good.
Anyway,
Well, I have enjoyed listening to you. I've enjoyed listening to your podcasts, and thank you for having me. And I've enjoyed the Zooms and just to meet you and a lot of the talented ladies that kind of showed up on the Zoom and talked about
Yes.
their projects too. I've enjoyed that. So I've appreciated all the stuff you've shared, and I've gotten a lot of tips
Good.
from all the various things that you've shared, knitting and otherwise.
We wonder
Yeah.
how many of those you really will get when you watch.
I went and got butter at Costco before they stopped.
did you?
Yes. I every it seems like every podcast I watch, I learn a tip or something that I've got to be doing that I've somehow these things I'm not in the loop, and so I've appreciated things like that.
Yay.
Oh,
That's
well,
awesome.
my goodness. Well,
That's
thank you
awesome.
so much for joining us, and thank you everybody out there for joining us, and we will see you next time, and we will be back after Easter, so have a very blessed Easter, everybody.
Yes.
Happy
Happy
knitting.
Bye,
Easter.
y'all.
Bye.
Good talking to
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.